Hello, and welcome back to Kayla Reads. If you are here for the first time, I run a YouTube channel called Kayla Says. This is not my normal background that you'll see in the background of the Kayla Says videos or the Kayla Reads videos, and the reason for that is because I moved apartments. And while I've been moving, as you can see behind me, things are not set up yet, I have been setting up and I have been listening to the audiobook for Yesteryear, which is the debut novel of an author named Caro Claire Burke. And this book has made a lot of waves in its short lifetime. It was recently optioned by Anne Hathaway, which means that eventually it's probably going to be made into a movie or a TV show of some kind. It's been on all of these recommendation lists. It's very hyped up, and I'm gonna be honest, I was apprehensive because this kind of book is not the type of book I typically go for, and I'll explain what I mean. Wow, this room is really... Sorry it's so echoey in here, guys. I guess it's because there's not stuff in here yet, but I'm listening to my own echo, and I'm this is weird. So let me quickly explain sort of the hook of this book, and don't worry, I will not get into spoilers right now. I will denote when we are getting into spoiler territory. But the hook of this book is a Tradwife influencer one day wakes up in the year 1855. So obviously there's a lot of irony just in that concept, and the book is a satire. It's meant to be sort of, a commentary. It's meant to be funny in its own sort of dark, bizarre way. But I usually don't love books personally where the entire intrigue of it is purely just the concept. You know what I mean? It's almost like I can compare it to the Purge series of films, right? Great concept, not always the best execution because the story often relies on the concept itself and isn't character-based and isn't necessarily into getting to know characters in an interesting or unique way. And so I heard about this book. I was hesitant to really dive into it, but people were saying that it was really good, but I went into it knowing that just from the concept alone, I didn't think it was going to be my cup of tea necessarily. I'm gonna choose to frame this in a positive way and say that I went into this book thinking I wasn't going to like it, and I liked it a little more than I thought I was going to, but I still didn't like it that much. I don't love it as much as other people do. I'll get into why. I gave it a 3 on Goodreads, and I think that's fair considering that what I do love about this book is the prose, is the writing. I think this author is a very talented writer. You are reading or listening from the perspective of the protagonist, this influencer, Tradwife, Natalie, and I think the prose is great. There's just some really great sort of lines and internal monologue and commentary in here, and I think I would pick up another book from this author based on that alone. However, I do have some mixed feelings about the book divorced from its writing. This book puts you into the mindset of a Tradwife, and I've talked publicly on my own YouTube channel about how I don't like these bitches, right? These Nara Smith type bitches. I think this is more of a Ruby Frankie inspired character than it is Nara Smith. Maybe it's a little, it's kind of a combination of those two, the Mormon wives, girls, whatever. And I don't like these women. You know what I mean? And the issue that I've always had with them is that they live this trad lifestyle and pretend to be subservient to their husbands, and they put out this propaganda and this fake sort of lifestyle, but they're businesswomen. They have jobs. They are entrepreneurs in the traditional sense. They just pretend like they're not. They pretend like they're not smart. They pretend like they're birds, and that is just how they are. And this book does make commentary on that in an interesting way. For example, Natalie's husband, Caleb, is kind of an idiot. He's not smart. He's a legacy money type of guy. And I thought that was an interesting choice because it does put Natalie in the position of being the architect, being the driver of this whole sort of world, where she even says at one point that she wishes that the genders were reversed. She feels like she would be better off if she were a man and Caleb were a woman. And I think that commentary was good, was interesting, was what I wanted to see from a book like this. But you can just sort of feel the disdain that this author has for women like this, which, like, fair, they fucking suck, like, yes, but also it's kind of, it makes it almost predictable in a way where it's sort of the rest of the commentary, besides the sort of gendered aspect of these relationships, which I found interesting, was very on the nose. Like, oh my god, you're telling me that they don't actually all eat organic? You know what I mean? Like, I won't get into, like, really deep spoilers about how their influencer life is fake, but, like, I don't really think that's a spoiler. Obviously, everyone who's living this Tradwife influencer life is doing it in a dishonest way to some degree, but I found the way that all of that sort of unraveled to be very predictable, and also it just gets a little exhausting being in the head of this, like, bird of a woman. Like, because she's smart and she's calculating, but she just kind of, like, gets under your skin, and that's intentional, and you're just sort of, like, you're being primed for the demise, you're waiting for the demise because she's not a good person. But I just felt like it made the book more predictable in a way that wasn't as interesting to me. I also just... And I've seen I've seen two main critiques of this book, and I believe both of them to be true. The first one is that this feels like something that got written with the intent of making it into a Hulu limited miniseries, which, like, take that as you will. You know what? That's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm just saying it does feel that way. And the second thing is that it almost feels like this author just sort of created this caricature of this woman based on what she reads in Tradwife influencer snark Reddits. And I'm not saying that, you know, the book is necessarily... It is devoid of empathy for this woman, but I'm not saying the book necessarily needs to have empathy for her. You can have a reprehensible protagonist. You can be in the head of a protagonist who, like, doesn't make the right decisions and has some really questionable morals and values. I think that's interesting. I think that's fine. But what I found was that a lot of, like, the influencer commentary here was very sort of surface level. It didn't get all of the aspects of, like, these sorts of pipelines correct, in my opinion. Every time it referenced something that was, like, really, you know, sort of on the nose, like, at one point, Natalie is like, Caleb's been watching these videos and he's really into them with his buddies online. It's called the manosphere. And it's like, it just didn't, there were certain aspects of the commentary that did not land for me in that way. As far as the 1800s plot, I can't really talk about it without getting into spoilers, I fear, because it's there, but it's not there in the way that you think. So, brief synopsis here before I get into spoilers. I think that other people, obviously, like, it's been, like, raved about, are gonna have a better time with this than me. This is just, like, not the type of thing that I'm really into, and so, like, I'm trying not to let it cloud my bias. I think the writing is good. I think this author's pretty competent. It just wasn't exactly what I was looking for. I gave it a 3 out of 5. Okay, spoiler time. So you might think from the marketing of this book that it's like, we get a little bit of this Tradwife influencer's life, and then she wakes up suddenly in the 1800s. And that's a little bit like what it's like at the beginning. And then what the book actually does is it jumps back and forth between Natalie in this 1855 life, but she has all of her memories of, like, her Tradwife influencerdom. So she, like, thinks that she's been, like, kidnapped. She thinks she's on some kind of reality show. And it flickers between, like, her life in this 1855 sort of, like, dream state where we don't really know why she's there, and flashbacks of her, like, in college and the process of, like, becoming an influencer and all of the scandals and drama that sort of arise with that and culminate in this final scandal. I'll give this book credit. This twist at the end is not where I thought it was going, because I thought it was going to be And it sort of is that, you know, it culminates in this scandal that makes her look really bad, you know, all the stuff that you would think in terms of a child family vlogger, influencer, Tradwife getting exposed for, like, bad stuff, you know what I mean? Like, whatever you think that is, like, that's what happens. And so, like, I'm like, oh, okay, she can't handle the pressure of all of that, and so she kind of, like, develops some kind of psychosis. That's sort of what actually happens. But also what happens and what we learn is that after this whole Tradwife influencer lifestyle blew up in her face, Caleb and Natalie decide to raise the rest of their remaining kids in, like, a true pioneer lifestyle, like, off the grid. They don't send their kids to school. They don't have any sort of modern luxury whatsoever. They disconnect from social media entirely, and Natalie's psychotic break sort of coincides in a way where Caleb is keeping up this delusion for her. So she thinks that, like, you know, she was an influencer and then woke up in this sort of world. But really what's happening is that she made, like, sort of this conscious decision at some point to, like, disconnect from reality after this scandal happened, and a lot of her kids, like, grew up and, like, left and went to the modern world, and then she was still raising these kids in this, like, ultra off the grid, surviving the fallout pioneer lifestyle. The older kids basically, like, rescue the younger kids from this situation, and then one of the younger kids from this, like, pioneer lifestyle writes a tell-all book a la, like, the Ruby Frankie kids about what it was like to grow up with, like, a delusional, like, mentally ill mom. And it ends with, like, Natalie, like, in prison, sort of just, like, you know, suffering from these delusions still. I didn't think that was where it was gonna go, so I'll give the book that. I just think it gets a little over dramatic and silly toward the end. I just think there are certain things that happen where it's like, all right, this is a little bit over the top. Not that it has to be realistic. Obviously, it's a satire. I just think this lady really wanted to write about how she hates Ruby Frankie. Like, that's just how it came off to me. I don't know. And again, like, it is competently written. I don't want people to think that I'm shitting on, like, the trendy thing for the sake of shitting on the trendy thing. I just think that this wasn't for me. The concept was not strong enough for me to, like, be really invested. And it's not like it's very cynical throughout. Like, and I can handle that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't mind that sort of thing. But I just was like, it almost, like, I feel like it would have been better if I had more of the perspective of the kids. You know what I mean? Like, I almost feel like that would have given me something to root for, like, an inkling of, like, something human in the book. Like, it almost reminds me of how, like, The Boys does satire now. You know, where it's just, like, so on the nose and predictable that it's, like, you just kind of roll your eyes at it. Like, that's how I felt throughout. I would give this author another shot. I look forward to the inevitable Anne Hathaway miniseries. Like, this is going to be the new Handmaid's Tale. This was optioned because it 100% fills the Handmaid's Tale void in the era that we're living in. And some people are really going to live for that. And I personally, maybe I just have a different standard when it comes to, like, books discussing the more modern internet age. I needed a little more from it. That's just me, though. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I hate it. It does not floor me to come on here and, like, be a hater of the thing that's really popular. You know, like, it's not ideal, but I have to be honest. I can't come on here and be like, it was amazing. It was, like, the best book I ever read. Because, like, it's just, like, it's, for me, it's not. But I hope you enjoy it if you pick it up or you listen to the audiobook or whatever. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. This has been Kayla Reads. I'm going to go back to creating some semblance of an apartment and maybe trying to get rid of this echo and, like, maybe try to figure out how to soundproof the walls in here. Bye!